What's up, everybody? Welcome to the crew and you. We want to walk with you while God works in you and through you. Continuing our stress, depressed, and at rest series, hopefully helping you move from being stressed or depressed or both to at rest. Not perfectly and completely all the time, but progress in that way. So, we've tried to talk a little bit about the first assessment, which is what are you doing here, and trying to understand, evaluate what's going on. And then the second thing, trying to put biblical foundations for what's happening to me. Those are two really important questions to answer. What are you doing here? What's happening to me? And today I want you to think through and want us to think through hopefully some helpful ways to think through new ways of living that help create more, let's say, internal rest and peace. Because one of the things I think we should talk about today that I notice and that everybody notices in their own life is the fact that breaks, or let's say vacations, or getting a break, stepping away, changes nothing. And it may be fun while it happens, but it doesn't do anything for your emotional well-being and state.
It doesn't sustain you more than a short period of time.
Anything. Right. It's like a camp high or something where like you can't live a spiritually strong life off of 2 really awesome camps per year, but it can help you. So I think one of the things that people mistake, and there's this idea of like, I just need a break, like give me a break, and learning what I would call more like rhythms of rest instead of breaks for rest, learning a new way of living. We talked about this a little bit even with the hurry idea. It's like you can be busy but unhurried because it's more about an internal state and a mindset and a way you go about life and having emotional strength and mental strength and spiritual strength. And so helping people live lives that could create anxiety and stress, but do so in a way that actually leads to more rest and peace and contentment and steadiness. So that's kind of the goal of today's thought, to help everybody think through that. I mean, what has your experience been like? You go, we have lots of reasons to be stressed and depressed throughout our life. And you go on a break, or we get a vacation, or we get a night away, or we take the kids somewhere. And you come back, generally speaking, maybe it was fun, but you come back at the same. Does that ever depress you?
Things depress me, but not that. But I do think it's when you realize, in different stages of life, like that's not even, you can't even hope for that. It's not even realistic to have that. Or it's just like God has so much more for us than to always be looking for the next vacation. Like, what does it look like to really have rhythms for renewal in our days to prevent always having to chase the next break, chase the next, the way God designed our brains and bodies and soul is to have rhythms of renewal and time away with Him. And so fighting for those pockets within our daily life has been what I think at some point I realized would be the way God sustains us. Because, anything apart from the Lord is not going to provide what you need. So the beach can only do so much if it's not a way to experience more of the Lord and what He wants to pour into your soul. And even with the Lord at the beach, you come back and face the same challenges. Yeah. So it doesn't sustain the hope and help you need. So then the question becomes, well, how do I have that in my day-to-day life, no matter what my day-to-day life entails? So I think that is, while it might not be depressing that way, it is hopeful to have that in your day-to-day life.
I remember I remember this feeling of a couple summers ago, we're on like this great family vacation, this beautiful place. And I remember sitting there looking at this amazing scenery, and it's amazing, it's beautiful, and everybody's happy. And just sitting there feeling like, this solves nothing. This is enjoyable, but it doesn't do anything about the problems that you're facing. It just solves nothing, and it's enjoyable for what it is. But just anything, like I've had different scenery, same situation, different scenery, same problems, different scenery, same internal emotional state, like different scenery, same me, same us, same world, same. And it was just like, once again, this is great and it's beautiful, and it's better to have times like that than to not. And they're wonderful and great memories. But the idea that what's really needed is better rhythms to maintain a healthy steadiness than it is like a break to get me rejuvenated back again.
Yeah, I think there's so many valuable reasons to get away, to step away,
Sure.
to build those memories, to build those brain connections, to zoom out of your current circumstances and get fresh perspective. All of that. There's like a million valuable things that we like look forward to all the time.
Yeah.
So this isn't the antidote to that, but it's
No.
like getting an IV injection, and the medicine in the IV is just not going to last for what you need even the next week necessarily. And so it's like worth it, go get it. But if that's what you're chasing, that can't provide what you need. So
yeah, don't you think a lot of people live with like, if I could just get to blank, like if I could just get through this to that, or if I could just get to, if I could just finish or graduate or get that, or move to this season, or get a break, or go on vacation, and instead of thinking like, what can I do today to get me where I need to be, I don't have to live waiting for that. And the only thing I really should live waiting for is heaven. Like, heaven will be distinctly different. But today, it's like, no, the answer for today is in today. And I think learning that can help a ton, in terms of moving us out of constant anxiety or depression or just downtroddenness, discouragement, and at least progressing towards more a place of peace and rest. So, well, the text I think is helpful. It comes from Mark 6, and I think it's such an interesting idea that I really kind of resonated with and stuck with, especially during my particular season. Because one of the things I had to address was, how do I climb out of this hole that I'm in? Like, obviously God is, through prayer and a lot, God is going to do a lot in me and for me. But I also have a responsibility to try to do the best I can to manage, to grow, and to get well. And one of the things I kept thinking through was, what does it look like to maintain the same responsibilities and the things that might give stress or anxiety, but do so in a way that doesn't break you? What does that mean? Like, how do you do that? So you don't need a break. You need, the funny word would be like a breakthrough or something. You need a different way of life. And one of the things that got me thinking a lot was in Mark 6, and I'll just summarize it, but basically they've been doing ministry. And Jesus has this phrase where he says, come away and rest. And then he sends them in a boat. But the crowd follows them on the land. And when they get to the other side, the crowd is there. And this is when they have to feed 5,000. And so Jesus says, come basically take a break. But he sends them into a ministry assignment. It's not a break. And I was just thinking, what did Jesus mean when he says, come away and rest a while? But he doesn't send them into a time of rest. He sends them to work. So you just start to think, like, what does Jesus mean? He's not lying. What is it about the ministry that they were doing that would have produced rest, that would have answered that, like, invitation? So it's like Jesus' invitation, come and rest. The place he wants them to do that is a place of great work and stress and ministry and needs and burdens and people drawing on them and needing them. And this is when he looks at them and they're like, what do we do with all these people? And he's like, you feed them. Like, wait, what? And I'm thinking through what that could even mean. Like, what that whole scenario means has been helpful, I think, to me in terms of what are my expectations for how rest happens. So Jesus says, come and rest, and he sends them to work.
Yeah. And it's the part that gets me is they were ahead of them, waiting for them with crowds. So it's not even like he's like, hey, everything's going to pause. Like, we still have to fight for the time to go to a desolate place, to seek him, no matter what's waiting for us, no matter who we're letting down, no matter what tasks or things or people or whatever. It's not until all this is solved, kind of like you're saying, it's not wait till you get the vacation, then experience rest in God. Don't wait till the circumstance is over, then seek God. Don't, wait till the mission's over and then seek God. It's like the way he does it here is not that.
No, Not at all. I mean, it's the exact opposite. If it wasn't Jesus setting it up this way, and if it was your therapist or something, you'd be like, that's foolish. That's not what I need, But it's Jesus, and so we know it's right. And so then you're starting to think through, okay, what does that mean? So I think several of the things, I guess, that I have thought through with this that I found helpful to me is the first thing is you need to think through rest that replenishes and rest that depletes you. So there is a kind of rest or a kind of even work that can replenish and can create a restful spirit or peace, contentment or joy or steadiness, hope. And that isn't always found in like a physical break or an emotional break or a disconnection. Sometimes it's found in leaning in, not separating from. And there is the kind of rest like scrolling or binging Netflix that depletes you. And so sometimes there's this idea that if I can just disconnect, I can reset. And I don't think that's true at all in some ways, is to say you have to think through what kind of rest replenishes and what kind of rest depletes. And how can I establish the proper rhythms? And even as I'll see, I think in another point here, learn how I can be at a place of rest when I'm replenished by doing the work God has commanded to do and finding my peace in that place, as opposed to in a disconnection or a lack of activity or those things, But I think, generally speaking, in terms of discipling and a person, and particularly a Nova, let's just say a Northern Virginia Christian, the idea of making sure my rest replenishes me and doesn't deplete me, and knowing how much we are given to scrolling or binging or things that just deplete us as people, and even vacation, maybe overspending, all these things that we do could end up depleting us. But making sure the rest that we initiate replenishes us, which could be work, which could be things you're doing that you don't want to do.
So to take that from like sermon-y to real life-y, what do you mean?
Well, you
like
say, what, if I'm saying that and you're saying,
I'm asking
I'm trying to evaluate.
Because you're saying don't do these things that replenish, or do God's work and you'll find rest in it. Like explain what you mean, what that is and isn't in real life.
Well, one, like we said, the easy examples of rest that replenishes or depletes, rest that depletes is things that we commonly give ourselves to, which would be scrolling or even overspending or binging.
Yeah, and maybe like going out with friends for younger people.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a variety of things where this is, instead of resting, it's probably more like coping. And it's not re-energizing and redoing. That's why the same thing, even like a break or a vacation, could be in a sense a depletion if it's not unto the right things or replenishing you for the work at hand.
So then what does replenish?
So what I'm trying to, I guess, help see from the passage is what Jesus is teaching or giving by example is that the work itself and the ministry assignment and the burden is also the place of rest. So Jesus says, come and rest, and he sends them into a burden, into a work that's too great for them, into a place they have to rely on God, into a place where they have to manage the stress of thousands of people, into a place where they have to manage the needs, physical, emotional, spiritual needs of thousands of people. And Jesus calls that a place of rest.
And then he does abundantly more than they can ask or imagine. But first, they go to a desolate place.
He sends them to a desolate place, but it's not desolate. The funny thing of the passage is they get in the boat on one side, and as soon as they show up to the other side, the people are there. There's no break. That's the funny part. It's not desolate. So it's
fact-checking you in Scripture.
You're fact-checking me. This is the interesting part of the passage. And there's something to be learned there about, I think one of the things is when we learn to operate in environments of stress or need And that forces us to truly learn to rely on God and his power and dependence. Like, it's one thing to say I rely on God, but it's another thing to be in a situation where you're really needed, but you rely on God to such an extent where you're not stressed out. Like, this is pulling at every part of me, you know? Like, every parent would know, like, what that feels like. For, like, all the needs of the kids, though you love them, like, pulls at every part of you. But to be in that particular situation and to be relying on God to such an extent where it doesn't stress you out, and it's, in a sense, replenishing and restful. So that's, it's counterintuitive, but it's the example that Jesus gives us here, which I think is so interesting, that their place of work basically becomes their place of rest. The place of burden becomes the place of dependence. The place where everyone would say you need a break from that becomes the very place Jesus sends them into to rejuvenate them. And so why would Jesus do that other than, and obviously, listen, Jesus has tons of rhythms of getting away from everybody. It's not that you don't need that time alone. But when Jesus gets away from people, it's to be alone with the Father. That's it. That's his only reason. He doesn't do that otherwise. So thinking through what that looks like is the idea that then it's the rhythms of, okay, if I can, I was actually just listening to this podcast where the guy, it was like he's a Christian, but also like a really well-known clinical psychologist who works with like high-performing athletes, like Navy SEALs, leaders, military people. And one of the things he says was that like extraordinary leaders, they aren't extraordinary in ordinary situations. They're extraordinary in extraordinary difficult situations. Meaning that, and he calls it emotional resilience, that in a situation that would test the emotional resilience of most people and cause them to collapse and unable then to function. It's these group of high-performing people that in an environment of emotional stress are emotionally resilient. Therefore, they're able to function at a high capacity. I mean, think about obviously like an athlete who has to perform in front of thousands of people, or a Navy SEAL who has a really important job, their lives are at stake. And they're entering into a situation that would break most people. And the reason they're successful is because they're calm. They're emotionally stable. And obviously that's like cool. It's a cool thing. But I think what the scriptures would want us to understand is like, okay, you can learn emotional resilience, obviously, as like a gift. That's something you can grow in mentally. But the scriptures call this the peace of God. And it's like, if I learn different rhythms of life, I can walk in the peace of God, not in perfection or not that I never feel stress, but I can grow in this to the extent where I can be in a situation that requires much of me, but be emotionally resilient, therefore be successful in that situation. And because I've been successful in the situation, it becomes a place of rejuvenation because I accomplished something worthwhile in that moment. And so I think that idea, if you put it into the scriptures, because he was talking about how people can implement habits. It's the same idea of like military. Like you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of your training. So it's your habits every day that produce the kind of person that's able to handle that moment. They don't just pop out of nowhere. So it's the same with Christians. You don't rise to the occasion. You fall to the level of your habits and training. And if you have these right rhythms, so instead of looking for a break that it rejuvenates you to rise to another occasion, it's no. The real answer is, how can I implement the proper rhythms of my life? And even simple things like prayer and time with God and understanding the scriptures, serving others. When I can implement these things, I become a person of, let's say, emotional resilience, But spiritually speaking, you'd say become a person who lives in the peace of God.
Maybe what you really want in these things is, or what you really need is God's provision.
Yeah.
And so you want God to provide the rest you need, God to provide the peace you need. And like in this story, they need God to provide.
You fact check my story?
For them. I did fact
correct.
check it. I went back to the original language really quick. And
wow.
And it does seem It seems like, they beat them there. And so they did seek the desolate place. That was a priority to Jesus. He was, that was, what was prioritized. And then when they got there, the mission was set before them, which honestly is a whole word.
So there was
even
no desolate place.
The desolate place was no longer desolate because the people were waiting. Yeah. But there's something to be said for seeking that desolate place with Jesus, as we see him modeled many times in Scripture, of him getting away to be with the Father. And like you said, the goal of any rest or even stepping away or any of that is to experience more of the Lord. And I know for me, like, if home is my workplace and my all the roles I carry place and all of that, it's hard to also sometimes be the place of rest. And so to sometimes stepping away is what helps me glean more from the Lord, just to get a different environment. So we see Jesus step away with the Father a lot, but here it is like what Jesus ultimately provides more of himself to do abundantly more than I can ask or imagine on mission. So in the end, he's providing for them and their needs through that mission. Would you say?
Yeah, and think about how, I don't know if the word restful is right, rejuvenating it would be to watch God do a miracle and be a part of it. I don't think they left that situation thinking, I'm so tired.
I never got that desolate place. It was like,
shoot. Like, I wish that was different. I wish none of these people were here. No, they're probably like, this is unbelievable. Did you see what Jesus just did?
Experience more of God.
I can't wait to go home and tell my wife or kid. I can't wait to talk about this. This is amazing. So think about how excited they probably left that place, which from a human's eye is very demand-driven and difficult.
Yeah. Which also is like, I know a lot of people, especially with full home lives, is like you try to spend time with the Lord and then it feels like, I think, is it C.S. Lewis who says like kids aren't an interruption to the work, they are the most important work. But whatever the mission is before you, and in this context, I'm thinking of kids interrupting your time with the Lord and then you're all frustrated and you're like, go back to bed or whatever. It's like, no, look at this story interrupted by the people in the mission of God, what God wants to do. So you seek that time with the Lord, but also they're not frustrated. They stepped right in to do what was set before them.
Totally. And I think it is a good point to say, as a means of priority, not that you can't step out and do everything, but if you're going to step out and get time, the priority must be time with the Father.
Yes.
Otherwise, any other thing you might do, like even as simple as going to play golf or get your nails done or whatever, these things are fine. And Lord loves to bless his children. They're great. But those things will not sustain your well-being. Breaks won't do it. Mm-hmm. So the primary break has to be with God. And then, some other things might be able to supplement that. And I just think sometimes, let's say, people look to step out. They try something worldly, which is enjoyable and not wrong. But the stepping out with God isn't consistent enough to maintain. So those breaks don't do it because it's not supported by a rhythm of relationship with the Father.
Yes. Well, and so much is like our family devotional this morning of like everything you do, doing unto the Lord for God's glory.
Right.
Of making God famous. And so sometimes it's like unto what too. If I want this certain type of step away, breath, break, is it for my self-care or is it for more of like my soul care to pull me out to experience more of God? And that's where I think there's a shift, maybe especially for females, I don't know, where it can be, I am doing this, the end all isn't the look, the feel, the whatever, but it's an opportunity to kind of zoom out and taste and see the Lord in new ways. So that's just like a perspective priority shift of like, if all things can be done for his glory, even everything we do, eat, drink, anything can be with that in mind. Sweep the floor, whatever you're doing in your day at your job unto him. And then that's not the end all be all. So just something I think we've had to navigate a lot, even through both of our hard times when it's like the days and demands and people is so full. What does it actually look like? What actually brings reprieve? What is false reprieve? What is temporary reprieve? What is still okay to feel like reprieve and step back in? And so there are these lines, but you haven't shared what your rhythm, when you look at this, when you're saying you experience this, looking at how to pull yourself out of your depressive state in 2021, what did you actually implement that you feel like?
Well, first, I like the idea of soul care over self-care. I think that's a good, because soul care would involve self-care, but it's like the most important part of self. So that's a good, like,
I did a whole like conference
soul care
breakout on
better
that a
than
few years ago.
self-care.
Do you remember that?
I do
Well, you
remember
weren't there,
that now.
but
Yeah.
That is a passion.
We should do an episode on that.
Soul care versus self-care.
Yeah.
Okay.
We live in a world obsessed with self-care. And, once again, there's parts of that are fine. Like, obviously, you take care of yourself. But it's like if you...
Can't be the end all.
Yeah. If you could do a lot of self-care and be totally deplenished because you haven't done soul care. And you could do a ton of soul care and a little self-care and be totally stable and fine. It's like if the one thing is right, which is the most important thing. So that would be a good, actually, evaluation. Does my forms of rest, does it do soul care or self-care? It'd be a great way for people to think about my rhythms. Am I expecting, is my rhythms, do they produce soul care or self-care? That's great. For me, well, one was, once again, realizing that just the stability of I don't need a break or a different life. I don't need the problems to go away. I don't need to get out. I don't need a change of situation. I don't need any of that. What I need is, once again, a renewed focus and an understanding of living in these rhythms, making sure my time with the Father is, I think I talked about moving from an idea of like God as boss to God as Father.
Yeah.
In that season for me, it was like, I had no problems living probably for most of my life with God as boss. Like, he's in charge. I'm his servant. I don't have the right to like say anything. Like, I just have to do what he says. And there's some real good truth to that. He's in charge. But I think people maybe with my disposition can lean towards that. Like, I have to do the right thing before God. He's in charge, and I basically owe him. And I had to do what he says. I'm his employee kind of thing. And that, while can be sort of good, if it's not, it's the wrong priority of the relationship. The relationship is father-child, and then master-servant, And learning to interact with God as Father more often, more consistently, who cares about my life, my needs, who's not just like working me to death or wanting me to push through or like be the greatest employee. I'm not working for an Employee of the Month award with God, like, oh, look at all you did, which is kind of probably how I wouldn't have verbalized that. That's bad theology, but you'd live that out to say, I'm trying to become the Employee of the Month. I want to be the best servant of God I can be.
I don't think you would have consciously identified that.
No.
And you probably would have said, no, that's not the case until like all the screws fell off. And then you were like, wait.
So I would say that first rhythm was in terms of a rhythm of life, I probably associated God as boss more than Father. And trying to switch that and intentionally interact with him in that way. And not put the weight of the world on my shoulders or try to be perfect or, whatever it is. So I think that was a big one. And in that season too, let's say I did step out from some of my primary responsibilities for a month or so. But what was replaced with I didn't go on vacation or take a break or go golfing. I had extended time with God, reflecting on things, getting some help, some counseling, journaling. I started to journal a lot, and it was like
saw a counselor,
and all of that stuff really did help me, and if I'd have taken a break in other ways, it wouldn't have been inherently bad. But that soul care over self-care, was really super helpful. Which is like when you step out with God, and that can help you step back in.
Which there was also looking at different rhythms for like health, like what does it look like to really prioritize your exercise or shift your eating and all those. That's where it's like that cares for yourself because God designed that to be the case, but the end all wasn't for you to look a certain way or be. It was like, how can I care for my body to care for my soul, to experience more of the Lord and the healthy can provide for my soul. And so it was I think a full inventory of those things, daily rhythms of everything.
Your whole life, yeah.
And you've stuck to those years later.
certainly when you think about, and I tell guys this a lot, and I think I had to learn it in that season, was an increase in responsibility requires an increase in time management, meaning that you can't take on more things and then live in the same way you did with the same freedoms you had before. The simple analogy is like you can eat a whole pizza at midnight when you're 23, no problems. If I did that now at 40, that would not feel good, or that would ruin my next day. Like my body can't do the same things and recover in the same way. So I have an increase in that. So I have to increase in my habits and the same with life. Like you can't grow in life and take on more things, but kind of keep your youngish ways. Like I'll just push through, or I'll just be fine. And it's like, no, like you won't. So you need those rhythms. Like you have to run consistently. It's a mental health thing for me, running. Mm-hmm. You have to make sure your time with God is like consistent. You can't just like ebb and flow it. Like you need it like a discipline. For me, it was like you have to be more disciplined to get up and like start your day that way. Even thinking through work stuff, like you got to learn to delegate. You can't take everything on yourself. Like you have to learn to trust people. All of those things.
Yeah.
And even eating better. Yeah, I mean, I eat differently now than I did then.
And with that analogy, though, I don't wish in the same way that I could do what I did when I was 20. It's not like, oh, darn,
no,
often.
You don't want that. Yeah.
And it is like, well, but I also can do things now that I couldn't then.
Yeah.
Grown in wisdom and ability, and certain things that took so much time and effort now are a second nature because you flex those muscles so long. So it is like things shift and change, but God never leaves you where you are. There's so much good ahead. He's always doing a new work, and there's a lot that's incredible about that.
Totally.
What do you think
it's
about...
It's more beautiful. It just takes the adjustment. Some people don't adjust.
Yeah. But what do you think about that as you tell people like about time management? Have you heard people say energy management versus time management?
I've heard of that, yeah.
Do you agree? Less about time management, more about energy management. Like I could fit more into my time if none of it takes energy versus
probably right.
If a few things take all my energy, there's not time left for it.
Yeah, and there are this gets into like productivity hacks that I think help me a lot, which are simple things like you have about 4 hours a day where your brain is really useful, basically, like for deep work. You know, Cal Newport has this book called Deep Work, and Carey Nieuwhof has done some work on productivity, like from a Christian point of view. And it helped me to organize my day around energy management. So when I need to think really clearly, I know when my brain is at its best. I don't use that time for...
Is that morning for everyone?
Morning. Yeah. I mean, most people morning. Not everyone, but most. The general population.
Should be if your system's right.
The general population is morning. Depends on what time of morning, you know. Yeah. But almost for everybody, past lunch is pretty difficult to think well. And so even learning how to manage when you have your meetings, when you're trying to think, solve problems, when you're answering emails, all those kinds of things actually helped me a lot manage my energy, right, or time. Energy management, very important. Yeah.
I love all of those things because I think people used to view it as separate. Like this is a business mindset, leadership tool tip, and there's following Jesus. And I think it's so much more of like, look at how God designed us, which I know I say a lot, of how your brain to work, your circadian rhythm, how he designed us for sleep and rest and productivity and work. And so all these things just align together often. Again, if you're doing it all unto the Lord. And so it makes so much sense to know ourselves and how God designed us and what we need instead of just living reactive, trying to do all the things in our own strength. And it's like, no, God designed you for a purpose in certain ways to do abundantly more than you can ask or imagine as you seek and follow him.
Yes, that is so true. And I feel like I've learned so much. Like you go to, like an example in my world is you go to seminary, you learn how to teach the Bible, but nobody teaches you how to lead an organization. And in some ways it can feel like a worldly skill set. Like I just need to be like super spiritual. It's like, no, you need to be spiritual. You need to know the word. You need to do all these things. And if you're going to do what I have to do, at least in my situation, you're going to have to learn leadership and management. You're going to have to learn these things. Otherwise, you're going to crumble. And you can't. I just feel like maybe sometimes Christians over-spiritualize. And we obviously under-spiritualize too. But how you treat your body matters. That could be a spiritual thing, obviously, too. If you're leading anything at all, like learning to lead well matters a ton. Like learning to manage your time and learning productivity hacks. That stuff matters. Like, it matters a lot. And I think probably on my side before, it's like serve the Lord, wear yourself out, know the word, pray, and it'll work out. And although those are wonderful things and those are primary things, life is a little bit more complicated than that. And if you're going to make it, you're going to have to learn all these skills, that by God's grace, even Christians and non-Christians can give wisdom to some of those areas in life. So,
yeah. Yeah, I think that's good. I think the finding rhythms within your day of like first thing in the morning, what does it look like? Right before you go to bed, what does it look like? What does it look like to find pockets in your day of rest and rejuvenation? And sometimes you just look at the opposite. What am I doing that's doing the opposite? And where can I kind of replace that with something greater? And it's actually so hard, and probably what God has for all of us is to seek nothing for a few minutes except
get
Him.
that space.
Yeah, and then where am I obeying what God has for me on mission that will actually bring me more life, not less, that will actually unburden me, not burden me, just to walk in faith and trust Him for the provision.
No, that's right. And I think to close on that, the learning in that, let's say a rhythm, is learning just when you feel like, stepping out, learning how to lean in to that, like learning how to lean into the work, take on the responsibility, continue to face the difficulty and press forward, but have the right conscious effort within those spaces to depend upon the Lord and to do it God's way, and learning to lean into that instead of stepping out, learning to rest and find rejuvenation in it, not out of it. Learning to do that on a daily basis is super, 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 super helpful.
Yeah. So.
Which is really a mindset thing,
Yeah.
Well, I hope this has been helpful. Any final thoughts?
No, I'm just looking for a summary statement. Like,
Ooh.
I think this was titled "Give Me a Break."
Give me a break. I mean, part of it is you got to learn to rest in the work, not from the work.
Yes, that's it.
So you just need to evaluate now. How do I learn to rest in my current state of life, not from it? And I think most people think rest only exists from it. And that is few and far between, so you have to learn to rest in it. And if we can learn that, we can at least become more, I think, at rest, which biblically speaking would be at peace in situations that are anxious and depressed,
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, I hope this helps you guys a little bit more every day. Maybe take some time to evaluate that in your life and let the Lord speak into you and provide for you as you go continue to serve Him. So thanks for joining us today. As always, we want to walk with you while God works in you and through you. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.
Bye.